West Denver. Sleep deprived and heavily caffeinated.
All right, let's do this then.
This is the Jeff and Bill Show.
I don't understand why this is an issue.
They don't always agree, but hey, at least they have coffee.
Coffee.
And each other.
I love you, man.
God help us.
I want to bless him. We need all the help we can get.
Now here's Jeff Hunt and Bill Thorpe. The Jeff and
And
Bill
good morning
Show.
one more time.
News Talk
Tuesday morning,
710.
Peter Boyle's in for the fellows. They'll be back in a week. July the 8th, 2025, 710 KNUS Weather Center. Weather 96 the high today. Tomorrow, record breaker, 100 and 95 Thursday, 85 on Friday. Because of time with our guest that is left, we'll just go right to Blake Olson for the Blake Olson Report and tighten it up and come back with Dr. Rima Wadan and talking about Palestine. Stay here.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Good morning. It's Tuesday, another beautiful one in Denver, 66 and sunny. Expecting a high of 98 today. News presented by the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. Now is the time to stand with Israel. Call 800-301-1188. That's 800-301-1188, or go to 710knus.com. Click on the big red Stand with Israel banner at the top of the page. And our top story, rescue team still combing the Guadalupe River for any signs of survivors after floods in central Texas killed more than 100 people. The area was filled with families and campers, of course, preparing to celebrate for Independence Day when intense rain unleashed catastrophic flooding and washing away homes and vehicles. That summer camp was hit hard with 27 girls and counselors lost. A Colorado team is headed to Texas to help with recovery efforts. Colorado Task Force 1 leader Steve Azeltine says they're planning on being there for 2 or 3 weeks.
The first thing we do is we check in with the local authority and find out what's been done so far, and then we try to seamlessly, kind of work into their operation. We did respond to the Colorado floods a number of years back and worked in Lyons. That experience is used in day-to-day operations with what these firefighters and the engineers and the doctors all do every day.
A man's body was pulled Monday from Chatfield State Park Reservoir. Parks and Wildlife spokesperson Caravan Who says he was paddleboarding with his 2 children when strong winds knocked them into the water.
And then there are currents. And even if you're a strong swimmer, swimming is tiring in a reservoir, and it can be tough to save yourself. Any time of year, really, that you're recreating in water is a dangerous time in Colorado, because in early summer and late spring, you have water temperatures that are cooler. So when you go into the water, it can be kind of a shock to your system. And then later throughout the year, it's just hot.
And last hour, Ag Secretary Brooke Rollins announcing that the DJT administration has launched a nationwide effort to take back U.S. farmland from Chinese Communist Party-linked owners.
Today, we are taking this purpose and our American farmland back. American agriculture is not just about feeding our families, but about protecting our nation and standing up to foreign adversaries who are buying our farmland, stealing our research, and creating dangerous vulnerabilities in the very systems that sustain us. Reshoring and nearshoring our food and agriculture supply chain is essential for our nation's security.
The Rockies on the road, and they lose to the Red Sox 9-3. 64 in Aurora, 63 in Arvada, 66 in Denver. Peter is in for Jeff and Billy, the legend, in this week. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Going to be a hot one along the Front Range today. Temperatures will be getting into the low to mid-90s with a few widely scattered showers and thunderstorms late afternoon and evening. Highs, mid-90s, lows tonight, low to mid-60s. Hot and sunny Wednesday, middle to upper 90s. 60s for lows, an isolated thunderstorm. Lower 90s Thursday, afternoon and evening thunderstorms. Cooler with scattered showers and thunderstorms Friday and Saturday. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free, no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Morning, everybody. Tuesday, 7:10 KNUS. I'm Peter Boyles in for the fellas. Our guest is in studio, Dr. Rima Wadan. She's Palestinian. And before we begin again, I'm always fascinated by what has become of talk radio and happened to talk radio. But we have this instrument called the First Amendment. And those of you who spend time actually reading the meaning of the First Amendment of the Constitution, it is about what you don't like. And it's clear if you read the scholars, the true scholars, who say the First Amendment of the Constitution is there not to protect what you like, but to protect what you don't like. It's there, it doesn't protect me for what I like, but it protects what I don't like. And it is interesting, again, this is what has happened to talk radio. This woman, this physician, Dr. Rima Wadan, has been turned away by every other Denver media outlet, and this is her fourth appearance with me in, I think, about maybe a year and a half, 2 years. And what once was. So I have a bunch of questions. People are just mailing them in. You can do so on the Dan Kaplan text line, 720-819-5115, 720-819-5115. You ready to answer these things? Well, that one I won't read. That isn't. I'm trying to find ones that are acceptable. What is your guest's thoughts on the Palestinian government and what they have and have not done? They have to share some of the blame.
Yeah. No, I have been always criticizing the Palestinian Authority. I really don't know if they have made inroads and many times silenced by, external pressures not to talk or to come to the table or not come to the table. But, for the last decade or so, they've been missing in action. They have not really been there to support the Palestinians in the region. There's not been enough to do to move the needle so that we can literally work toward things that have been obstacles for the Palestinians, such as the illegal settlement expansion, such as the demolition of Palestinian homes, such as Palestinians being evacuated. It keeps on landing on, we can't do anything about it, we can't do anything about it, we can't do anything about it. So the Palestinians are frustrated with the way that the Palestinian Authority has moved, and parts of Hamas too. So there's been frustrations from both angles, from both the Gaza Strip and from the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank.
There really is an opportunity for Donald Trump. It really is. And Netanyahu makes a statement about the Peace Prize last night, but I never expected Joe Biden to do anything.
No, he was a complete and utter flatline.
I agree.
For the international community, for any hopes of prosperity, and I think he was a weak leader.
Oh.
So we can all agree upon this. And I'm a person, I'm an independent, I'm not Republican or Democrat, but I can just say facts on the ground that he really didn't move the needle much. If anything, he was absent. But here you have Trump, and we're hoping. The international community, you want prosperity for the economy, for the way things. Don't divest money from our prosperity here in the United States, where a third of our tax money will go off into the defense budget, where we are struggling as Americans. Teachers are struggling, our police force, our the workforce here are just having a hard time.
Palestinian people support Hamas. Years and money provided to Hamas to build 300 miles underground tunnels. The Gaza people had to support Hamas to be able to do that. The doctor didn't deny the children are being taught to kill Israelis.
There are people that have supported Hamas. There is no denial of that, and they all had to use extraneous sources to build, a network that they had to bring in aid in and other supplies in. I'm not in denial of the fact. The fact is there was a siege done by Israel, so we have to also address the root cause before we talk about the ways that they went around things. If you're supposed to be a sovereign country and Israel's controlling all 4 of your borders, how do you get aid in? How do you get food in? They're going to have to be innovative. I'm not agreeing with what was done, but you can't be, looking at one side when there's something simultaneously being done, and accountability and blame needs to be supported.
We'll take the calls. We'll go to the phones. This is Ben in Morrison. Thank you for calling the radio show. Good morning.
Yeah. Hey, Peter. How's it going?
Good.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of these studies.
Say that again.
A little thing.
Your phone's breaking up. We're having trouble here. Try it again.
What these texters that are sending in these vile responses don't seem to understand is you can be pro-Palestinian and anti-Hamas at the same time. Those two things do not have to go together. And you can also say what Israel's doing, where they're bombing non-surgically and just dumping bombs into civilian areas and killing a lot of civilians, is pretty perfect. I don't know why some of these cowardly MAGA idiots can't seem to figure that out. It's not a hard concept that we don't need to be bombing children. They should be much more surgical with the way they're striking. And that doesn't mean you support Hamas at the same time.
Yes, back across. Doctor?
I agree with you. I think that those two facets can completely simultaneously be in existence.
When you read, as a student of history, if you read history and you eventually see where things end up, and I'm always drawn to Irish history, that the British they force the Irish people to become the IRA. They force what happened to Ho Chi Minh, and not to defend, but to say, look, the way the French treat everybody, you force these people to become who they become. And in our country, the British forced the colonialists to become who they became. And, all right.
And that's the Palestinian situation, is that you'd only recognize Palestinians when these violent bursts come into space. But when we sit there and plead for our humanity and ask for the cessation of the dehumanization of the Palestinians, and that we are targeted, exploited, ethnically cleansed, those are completely pushed to the side. And we always have to plead for our humanity. But you do not recognize our humanity unless there's something violent. And that's where we're pushing back as a Palestinian community, saying we do not want this cycle of violence to continue on.
Here we go. There wouldn't be the number of Palestinians killed and maimed if Hamas did not use their own people as shields.
I mean, that whole argument, the same thing of saying that Palestinians do not support the humanity of their own people is just not acceptable.
Where did Palestinian name come from? Who named that area then, and why? My point is, who really has a claim to that area or any area of the globe? It was a British thing.
It's like the Philistines.
There you go.
In the region, and there's a government there. There was a sovereign people. They accepted people from the mass exodus of the Holocaust, and then there was a Balfour Declaration, which is a letter that was then promised the Israelites a homeland, and that's where you got the genesis of Israel in 1948.
On humanity, when you tie up entire families and burn them to death, you have no humanity.
I mean, are we talking about what Israel's been doing to the Palestinians?
No, I think it's meant the other way.
Yeah, I mean, the cycle of violence on both sides has got to stop. But when we have tent cities that are being targeted by the Israeli government as well, where they're burning these families that are in these tents. That is not okay. The burning of Israeli citizens in whatever capacity is not okay.
As I recall it, the two-state solutions as well was well on its way until a hardline right-wing Israeli assassinated the former president of Israel. The inter-Israeli violence helped end the hopes of the two-state solution. Both of those men were killed. Sadat was killed too.
Yeah. And Yitzhak Rabin was a prominent, wanted to see the peaceful existence. I mean, but we can't have a full two-state solution with illegal Israeli settlements in the Palestinian territories. It's literally just carving up Swiss cheese into the territories. And actually, as of 2023, 2024, the Israeli Knesset actually voted to say that there is no such thing as Palestinian citizenship. So the two-state solution is dead. The Israeli Knesset has actually rubber stamped that. So there is no talk about two-state solution.
When Jimmy Carter, and it was really interesting, I met Jimmy Carter, we talked about it. Mm-hmm. Carter, in essence, does the census, and he could find very, very few Egyptian families who had not lost a son in the wars against Israel. And consequently, he could not find an Israeli family that had not lost a son or daughter in the wars against the Palestinians. And because the Egyptians there's a line of history that says the Arabs will fight to the last Egyptian. And that's how they fought those wars. And so he brokered Camp David. And the American people bought the peace. Mm-hmm. Bought peace given here, bought peace given there. Egypt got money and Israel got money. The fences went up on the Palestinians. And both of those men were assassinated.
Yeah.
Sadat was assassinated and Begin was assassinated. From within, not from without. To you, it says, why are you pushing back in the U.S.? Why don't you go over there and push back?
Push back against the...
I'm just reading the text message.
I mean, I'm sitting looking where our taxpayer money is going. $14 billion is going to Israel. And I don't think the common American citizen really truly understands that. We're talking about, we're trying to control this accessory spending from the American side and looking at, is it the NIH that has too much money or whatever? When we're sending $14 billion to the state of Israel, when we can utilize that money here in the United States. So I'm just pushing back on our government because we have to put onus on us too. We can't be, brokering a peace agreement and simultaneously signing a contract for, bombs and guns and ammunition to the Israeli side. Either we're a fair broker in peace, or we're fueling the fire and providing the arms to do it. Like we have to be, not hypocritical in our stance. And that's what I ask. If Trump was to broker a good peace agreement, is to do a fair, consolidated effort to do that.
Our guest is Dr. Rima Wadan. We're coming up on time. Text messaging. What does she think of Mahmoud Abbas's controversial? We're rolling all of this. Abbas has been a subject. What goes on to that? What do you think of Mahmoud Abbas?
No, I think Mahmoud Abbas has not really, stepped forward. I've told last decade or so, he's been literally missing in action. He has not made, full strived efforts to, maintain negotiations for the Palestinians and broker, or push back against illegal violations against international law. He's been allowing them. And so when you allow the continuous violations against Palestinian sovereign territory and you can't do anything, you become irrelevant. You become, dispensable. And elections should have taken place like a long time ago. And I feel like these people who like to be in the power like to control things and they delay elections. And that's what Netanyahu is doing. That's what Mahmoud Abbas is doing.
That should say the Irish support for Palestinian cause is intuitive as how people are viewing the situation. Yeah, that may be a hold up. Ask the guest about Israel's state versus the people of the Bible and evangelical support of the state, Zionists have been manipulating evangelicals for 100 years.
Yeah, there's been a very strong support. CUFI is the one that comes, Christians United for Israel, along with AIPAC. Those are two U.S. organizations that are literally funding this whole calamity in the Middle East. And the right-wing, Christian group or the Zionist group have fueled this, whatever they want to call it, the coming to Armageddon or whatever.
Second coming.
Which is then going to result in the Palestinians and the Israelis killing each other to the death. That's the goal, and I don't support it. I feel like that does not help the situation. That just adds more chaos and fear. And when Iran kind of stepped into this, it really looked like those initial signs. And so I really wish that we can get more of a common grasp of really looking at the humanity of both parties and really, bringing it back to, sensible approaches of peaceful negotiation between both, allowing Palestinians to come to this table and not executing them in the process.
When Israel left Gaza and gave it to Palestinians, why did they immediately start lobbing rockets and voting terrorists in? They have no interest in peace. Arafat had no interest in peace.
No, there has always been a control of the borders in Gaza. If you allow it to become sovereign, there wouldn't have been a response. But if you say that, by the eradication of all people, Israelis from the region resulted in peace for the people in Gaza, that is fictitious. The people were struggling then in 2006, and they continued to struggle till 2005. Living in Gaza under those conditions was very hard. I mean, we couldn't get medical aid in there. It was hard to bring in our medical teams to go down to just perform basic surgery. And so to say that they were given this beautiful land and they could have done everything, they did. They built it. It was beautiful, pre-October. And the amount of hospitals that they built in the region was really a testament to what they could have done. But to say that they were given everything with no controls is, we have to look at all the extraneous factors that controlled the region.
Couple more minutes left in this segment, and we'll go back into open lines. This is aimed at me. What do you think, Peter? Think of the fact that Ireland is so interested in supporting the Palestinian cause so far as investing in pop culture in Ireland to ban kneecap, for instance. Anywhere that the British have been in the world, problems remain. Mm-hmm. Anywhere that the British have been, problems remain. The Irish, it's interesting, I came across this in my reading. There's a terrible, terrible group that the British brought into Ireland after the First World War, and they were dubbed the Black and Tans by the Irish, and because they had this mixed uniform, they had the tan pants of being soldiers in the British Army, and they gave them black shirts, and the Black and Tans were there's words you can't use to define who they were, but the time of the Tans. And when the British leave, and Michael Collins and the rise of a not a permanent government, but a temporary government, and what did the British do with the Black and Tans? They took them to the Middle East. And the Tans went into what's called Palestine. And what wasn't a state of Israel yet. But that's where the British put the Tans. And India and Pakistan, and you just go around the world and you'll see where the British once were. So the Irish who know the history of what the British did, that's why, one of the many reasons. So anyhow, let's see, well, a couple more. Gaza shares a border with Egypt. Even Egypt doesn't want to help the Palestinians. That is your thoughts.
No, there's corruption on all angles, and the Palestinians are in the middle of this thing. I mean, to cross the border, so there's a lot of families that in order to cross, like to get out of Gaza and get out of harm's way, you need to go into Egypt.
Yes.
The price of your life is it can go from $5,000 to $10,000.
Yes.
Till today, we don't know who's benefiting from this money exchange. Is it Egypt? Corrupt leadership in Egypt? But there's a whole corrupt scheme going on over there, and the cost is Palestinian lives, because those who can't afford it are stuck in Gaza. Your fate is set. You will die if the violence continues on. So I'm not a fan of the way that the Egyptian government is using Palestinian lives as a pawn.
Those are care responses. I don't know what that means. In capital letters, care responses, meaning, I guess, the things you're saying. I don't know, but just people send them in, I read them. Bottom line, if Israel puts its weapons down, we know that the Palestinians would butcher as many Jews as they can, and the Palestinians put their weapons down, there would be peace.
Yeah, both people have to put their arms down. I 100% agree with the peaceful notion. But if we keep on fear-mongering, saying, if they don't, we're going to keep this cycle going, we are never going to lead to anywhere. Both sides need to come to a collective agreement so that the security on both sides is there. Because the fear, the intergenerational trauma on both sides exists. And it has to come where there's common sense that prevails, where we're like, we have to support life. And right now, if we don't move forward, there's going to be more death on both sides. And so there has to be common sense coming to the table to allow the prospect of peace to go on and stop this whole nonsensical, violent churn of saying it's going to be their fault, and everybody's finger pointing. Like, both are to blame. But the asymmetry of power is 100% there. You can't say 1,200 deaths is equivalent to 60,000 deaths. It's not. And it's not acceptable to where we are sitting in this time. It is not acceptable to allow this genocide to move forward. And we have to allow both communities. The security of both are intertwined with one another. The security of the Palestinians is intertwined with Israeli security, and Israeli security is intertwined with Palestinian. If we can't get to that notion and accept that as fact, we're never going to get to anything promising.
Do you ever see a time coming that there will be peace?
I'm always an optimist in that realm.
Regardless of that,
is it going to be in the near future? I don't think so. I think it's going to take decades to rebuild what the destruction that has been there. Yeah. But if it comes, it'll come, because I think the average person understands that colonialism is not okay. You can't continue military colonial rule and suppression and oppression on a people and say this is going to be the best interest for the security of the nation. I think what's going to happen is there's going to be a tide. The tide is already changing, that the young people understand apartheid, they understand ethnic cleansing, they understand colonial rule, and they reject those ideologies. They reject those type of principles. And so all countries on the face of the earth that continue with the occupation have been shown to fail. And we use South Africa as our reigning supreme, example, where there was decades of struggle between the two communities, but then people really had a tide and shift where we understood that there's the only way to move forward is for all of us to recognize each other's identities, to stop, going into this I'm going to eradicate your existence mentality, and to come down to the same platform of allowing us to coexist and move forward.
We end the segment with this, in this interesting text. Thank you for having this conversation. It's nice to hear something other than the one-sided discourse on this complicated global situation.
Thank you.
Interesting.
Yeah.
We'll see you again in about a month and a half, and hope for the best. And Netanyahu is here, and it would be wonderful if Donald Trump can get the ceasefire, and then the rebuilding process begins.
Yeah.
You take care of yourself, Doctor.
Thank you, Peter.
You're okay here. 710 KNUS, I'm Peter Boyles. Lines are open. 303-696-1971. Here we go. Okay, it is 8:35. Peter Boyle's in for the guys. 710 KNUS on a Tuesday morning. It's going to be really hot. 303-696-1971. We have wide open lines. That last segment that was an hour and 28 minutes or whatever it was with Dr. Rima Wadan speaking about, their thoughts on the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. I'm always fascinated. They can't get traction in this city. And they've talked to me many, many times about rejections that they get from the main big-time radio stations and the television outlets, and nobody seems to want to talk to them. And I come back to this notion, and by the way, lines are open, 303-696-1971. What much of talk radio has turned into, we talked about this this morning about the reviews and from Pam Bondi and the memos from the Department of Justice that there's no evidence that the late convicted sex offender, he's a pedophile, Jeffrey Epstein, kept a client list. Well, all you have to do is, get in the Wayback Machine and find out that not only was there evidence, there were books that he kept, much like the Hollywood Madam Heidi Fleiss, much like Denver Players and Sugar. They kept a book. They kept books. And the fears were that this contact list would include the names of, not only his victims, but also these prominent figures he socialized with, in some cases was accused of introducing two girls for sexual abuse. Now, that story is not going to be done. Maybe some one or two odd outlets will, but in the talk radio world that we now live in, that story isn't going to be talked about. Why? Well, because of these folks who I have affection and I had admiration for, rolled. You can tell. Look at Bongino. Look at Cash. Look at Bondi. They're outright lying when they said there were no books. So that's not going to be done on talk radio. I guarantee you, because talk radio has become pro a world that I certainly don't like to live in talk radio, and the media now has been coward. And so when something comes along like the Palestinians, and this has been a long, long, long battle with history on sides and history on other sides, and so when you wonder why these folks don't get a microphone in front of them, and I'm always interested in that. And believe me when I tell you that this idea of what Pam Bondi and the memo from the Department of Justice and saying there was no evidence the late convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein had a client list or was murdered. That was, and we have the evidence facing the other way. Let's just do some phone calls. Ready to go? Can we do that? Just a second. 303-696-1971. There we go. We go to Don. Don in Lakewood. Don, you're on a radio show. Thank you for calling in. Good morning.
Good morning, Peter. Hey, I missed the first part of the show. I'm curious, was there anything discussed with her about the actions of the students on the campuses?
Actually not. You're talking about Columbia and places like that. No, that did not come up, and I had it on a checklist, but the show got ahead of itself, and I was just reading text messaging to her. So it did not. So your thoughts?
Well, I had discussion with her quite a while back. I asked her a question about why should we support Palestine when we see all the things from the flags and stuff, and you said finally somebody asked a question. I have no animus towards her. I am not a fan of any of this Palestinian activity here in our country, the way they go about it. I know they have the First Amendment and that type of stuff. What kind of doctor is she?
I'd rather not. You know why? Because she is concerned about practicing medicine and people coming, and people do come after you, and you know it.
I mean, okay, so let me rephrase that. Is she a medical doctor,
yes,
or is she a PhD in something?
No, she's a medical doctor.
I don't care what she does. She's a medical doctor.
Yeah, she's a medical doctor. Yeah.
Well, I think this thing over in the Middle East, this stuff's never going to end. They've been doing it for how many centuries?
Please. The question I have is why, when Donald Trump, one of the reasons that I supported Donald Trump was that he said he's done with these senseless, endless wars that play out nowhere, and that the promise, the campaign promise, and that went out the window. And our country, this nation, has been involved in these senseless wars that were really predicated on lies. And where do you find your way out of it again? And I'm an old guy, and I had to think, why do we do one more time? Why do we go again? And I wish I knew.
What war has Trump gotten us into?
Well, the bombing, the sending and don't kid yourself that the Iranians are not going to come back. The attacks on the thermos spots, the factories that the Iranians were questing for a weapon, and we, United States of America, unprovoked in the sense of the Iranians never. It's like what Muhammad Ali said about what no Viet Cong ever called him that name. The Iranians now, they'll come back. You just have to know they'll come back, and I worry about stuff like that if we get ourselves locked into another war.
So let me ask you a question based on that. Do you think the Iranians fulfilled their commitment to have their weapons inspected legitimately?
The Iraqis or the Iranians?
The Iranians.
Well, the Iranians didn't ever. I don't think they ever agreed to have inspectors. John Kerry, when John Kerry met the mullahs had John Kerry at hello, and it was about the money that deal that it was during the and at the time, the money that had been seized by Jimmy Carter and frozen, and it was Iranian, the Shah's money, quote unquote, but it was Iranian money. So Barack Obama gets pressure from all the what we call the military-industrial complex. The Iranians were going to go to the Germans, they were going to go to the British, French, they were going to buy weaponry, they were going to buy replacement airplanes and everything that went with it. So the money never left the U.S. The money left the banks and went to the prime military contractors who sent weaponry then on into the mullahs. And that was the John Kerry deal and the Barack Obama deal. And then one of the very first things that Donald Trump did was make that same trip, and they went to the Saudi Arabians, and then they made the same deals where they armed or helped rearm or arm more the Sauds. But the money that was Iranian money stayed in the United States but went to Boeing and Northrop and those guys, and then that weaponry went there, and that was what John Kerry thought was a fair deal. I've often thought it wasn't, but you look for stuff like that. And the other part of it, yeah, go ahead. And the other part of it is I come back to George Bush, my favorite American president. George Bush, and he names the axis of evil, and he names North Korea, he names the mullahs, and he names Saddam. And I've often asked this question, and unprovoked, George Bush invades Iraq, claiming weapons of mass destruction and terrorist camps. There was no such thing. There were no weapons of mass destruction, and there was no terrorist camps. Saddam killed the jihadis, and George Bush invades. So, you and I and you and I and Adam live up the street, and there's a guy down the other end of the street, and he says, I'm coming up the street unprovoked, and I'm going to kill Adam. What's the first thing you and I do, Don? We go buy guns. Because,
lots of them.
Yeah, so when Bush invades and they kill Saddam, and I'm not a Saddam fan, but Saddam was there as a buffer against the mullahs, and he had no weapons of mass destruction. There were no terrorist camps.
Well, it was all a big lie.
All right, now, so like I said, so here we are up the street, and up the street comes this guy who says that Adam has guns in his house or whatever, and he doesn't want Adam to have guns or whatever, and he kills Adam. Well, you and I live across the street, and he's named us. He said, and then Don and Peter, they're the same. And I think, well, first thing I'm going to do. So one of the things that really pushed the weapons development, I'm no fan of Little Kim, man. Little Kim's a bad guy, and the mullahs are bad guys, but they reacted to what George W. Bush did. You tilt the world, and you see things differently. Someone is telling me the Iranian deal did include inspectors.
Well, that was the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, and then they had JCPOA in 2015, and the U.S. got the inspections, but that was through the UN.
That's what I thought.
The Iranians were supposed to be allowing us. I mean, that was one of the deals when Obama said, we're going to let them do this, or I'll be able to do. They're getting up 60-70% enrichment to have a nuclear reactor. You need about 15%. So clearly, their intentions were not humanitarian to build power plants and things like that. It was all war.
I am not defending the Iranians. I'm just saying, how big is the nuclear club, and how many different people in the world now? How many countries have nukes?
That'd be hard to really count. I think.
So
probably more than we're aware of, or more than they're going to disclose.
I agree. So do we hunt out every country that has a nuke? The North Koreans have a nuke. There's no question of that. And do you think that we should go after the North Koreans? Seriously.
Well, I suppose you got to think maybe in terms of what is considered a stable government, and that's a real dicey.
Is that really the job of our country, to police the world?
Well, that's dicey, Pete.
Don, I got a poll.
Take care, buddy.
All right, we come back. 710 KNUS, Denver's talk station. It's 8:48, 12 before the hour. Stay here. Here we go, Tuesday morning, 710 KNUS. We are Denver's talk station, 303-696-1971. Really hot day, back to the phones. We go to David in Denver. David, you're on the radio show. Thanks for waiting. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for taking my phone call. I came in the middle of the previous speaking to, I don't know, maybe this was discussed. I don't really call, I just listened to the news and what's going on, but I was a little bit upset to equate the Israelis' attitude and the way they look at things to the Hamas. She mentioned, you asked her about people being burnt to death, which took place October 7th. Said the Israelis also burned people to death in their houses. And you were pretty soft with her. And you yourself know it's a lie, that the Israelis did not start any wars. They were always attacked first. It was defensive posture that they were presenting. They never, ever began a war. And you're aware of that. The Palestinian Charter has in it the clear message from the river to the sea. They want to destroy all the Jews. Why would someone of any intelligence believe this lady, like you seem to have believed her, that there's a quality of attitude?
Yeah, it wasn't a question we challenged many times. When she got into the really heated conversation, she only had 2 calls, and the first guy, and he was the guy who really went at her, and I stepped back out of it and let them go. It isn't so much that it's, and I accept the criticism, but the Palestinians, do you think they have a legitimate complaint? Palestinians, forget about, if I could for a moment, Hamas or Black September or PLO or people that have run those kinds of things. But do you think that the Palestinians have a legitimate complaint?
A complaint of what, sir? What kind of complaint?
I'm just asking, just having said, do you think...
What kind of, well, you're being too general. What kind of complaint are you talking
about? That they had their land taken from them.
Let me tell you something. They have no more right to the land than anybody else. Jews have been in you call Palestine for a long time. That they have a right more than we do, is fictitious. You know that yourself.
First of all, I don't think that God's a real estate agent. Number 2,
I didn't say that.
I know you don't.
Hold on. Don't come in with that. Then.
I'm not saying
we've been living there also. We've been living there also with the same right as they do.
This is hard. One of the times that in the beginning of the state, when David Ben-Gurion asked find us the title and title to the land, and was told they didn't have a title. No one had the title, so it got back to weaponry. It got back to strength. It got back to the Napoleon might makes right. And the Israelis, the Zionists, they were then Zionists then. And I can put you on hold. We can continue on the other side. Would you like to do that?
If you would like to, I'm happy
of course.
to. I mean, there's a bunch of lies you're coming up with, so I'd like to defend us.
Well, of course, I'd love to have the conversation. Put you on hold. Hang on, I'll bring you back. 710 KNUS.